Now we move on to question number 4. Now, this is a good question. No, they're all good questions, but, this is a good question right here, because I think that a lot of times we as Christians, we say, oh, God's in control, God's in control, God's in control, and we think God's in control of everything, right? But is God in control of everything? Actually, He's not, okay? Number 4, if we have free will, why do Christians say God is in control? God is in control, but at the same time, we need to understand that the very fact that we have free will is that God is granting us some things that He is not taking control of Himself. Okay? Now, kind of stepping back a little bit, do we have free will? Can we point to the Bible and can we say, hey, it says right there, we've got free will. Let's go, and well, we won't go, but let's just take a mental journey back to the book of Genesis, right, to the creation of Adam. You remember that God created Adam, put him in this beautiful garden, surrounded from all of these fruit trees, and in the middle of that garden, there was a certain tree. No, it was not an apple tree. It was a tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And what did God say about that tree? Okay. First of all, He said, you may freely eat from all the fruit of the trees in the garden, except do not eat from the fruit of the knowledge of the good and evil, from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, or what was going to happen? You will surely die. Okay? Now, is that free will? Yes, it is, isn't it? Because what we see is we see that God is stating His will, what He wants to happen, and that is eat from all the trees of the garden, but He's also given a prohibition here. Do not eat from this tree. And so it's very clear, God wants you to do all of this. God does not want you to do this thing right here. Right? Okay? Now, if Adam didn't have a choice, why would God need to give that command? He wouldn't, would He? Especially the command, the prohibition, with a penalty attached. Now we go back to that fear of the Lord, right? And that judgment. You eat from that tree, you're going to die. Okay? And so there is the idea about free will. Now, did Adam exercise his free will? Yes, indeed he did. Right? He went and he ate of that fruit, and when he did he die?
But wasn't he just trying to keep peace in the family?
Well, that's a very good question of why he did it. Maybe we should put that down as number 9. Okay? Eve was deceived, Adam was not. And so, yes, the serpent deceived Eve, but when Eve gave it to Adam, when he took the fruit and he ate it, he knew what was going on. He knew what was going on. Now, that lends itself into the question of why did he do it? And you can probably find all kinds of different answers from that. I kind of think that maybe Adam loved Eve and understood God's character to the point that if he realized, hey, if I eat, then God is going to send a Redeemer to redeem her and to redeem me. If Eve, and this is all just subjecture. We can't go to a verse in the Bible to pin it out. So don't say that this is this is Steveology 101 right here. But if God would have allowed, if Adam would not have eaten the fruit, and God would have therefore destroyed Eve right there, God could have created Eve 2.0, right? And Adam knew that because he had already created Eve. But, I just kind of think that maybe Adam was just kind of looking at it and seeing the fact that if he ate it, then God would send a Redeemer for the both of them. Okay? Now, I don't know. I might get up to, in heaven, and right after I get shot down for my question about, what about the dinosaurs, then, I'm going to maybe ask that question, and the Lord's just going to say, oh, okay, all right. So anyway, getting back to this idea about free will, we do have free will, and it's shown right there with the creation of Adam. So if you think about it, with God creating Adam and then placing that situation in the garden with that prohibition, you can see that God is taking a little bit of his sovereignty and he is relinquishing control of it. Okay, and that's really what we need to understand about is God being the sovereign of the universe, is that by being the sovereign of the universe, whatever God wants, God gets. Right? He's the ultimate authority. And if he wants something to happen, he does create it and he does do it. And so when we go about and say God is in control, are we lying about that? No, we're not. When we're talking about God's sovereignty, right? When God wants something done, he's going to do it. And so God is control. And is God in control of a lot of the things that go on in our lives? Yeah, he is. Is he in control of the bigger picture as far as the affairs of humanity, the rising up of kingdoms and the falling of kingdoms, the rising up of rulers and the falling of rulers? Yes, he absolutely does and is. But how does God do that with the same time of keeping man's free will intact? Man, that's an interesting little question there, isn't it? Now, if you recall, with God sending Moses to Egypt, right? Going up to Pharaoh and saying, "Let my people go," what was the Pharaoh's response? "No, I will not let your people go." He didn't always say that, though, did he? When you read through the account of the plagues in the book of Exodus, you will see that sometimes when the Lord would strike Egypt with the plague, that Pharaoh would call for Moses and Aaron and say, "You may go into the desert and have this sacrifice to the Lord." He would sometimes put stipulations on them. But then, when he would put stipulations on them, Moses would say, "No, we can't do that." Then said that the Lord would harden Pharaoh's heart, right? Okay. A lot of Calvinists will look at the story of God hardening Pharaoh's heart and point to the fact that God is in control to the point that we don't have free will. That Pharaoh was not and did not have free will. That God hardened his heart and Pharaoh would do what God wanted no matter what. Which, when you look at the Exodus, all of this was what God wanted, right? Okay. So you scratch your head with that and you go, how does that work with free will? This is what's interesting. When you look at the book of Exodus and all of that story, there was an equal number of times where it said that Pharaoh hardened his heart, as it is where it said God hardened Pharaoh's heart. Okay? An equal number of times. So when we say God hardened Pharaoh's heart, he didn't have any choice. Well, wait a minute. Why can't we say Pharaoh hardened his heart? He had all the choice in the world. You see, the two were really working hand in hand together, to where Pharaoh really had his free will, but at the same time, God was accomplishing his purposes using Pharaoh without Pharaoh even acknowledging it. How did Pharaoh get to his place and position to begin with? God. Because God raises kingdoms up, God puts rulers in place, God put the Israelites there in Egypt, God allowed other people to come in and defeat the Egyptians where they didn't know who Joseph was, right? And so you've got that in place where God takes care of all of that situation. Here is a situation where Moses comes in before Pharaoh and makes a request, and Moses is at this point an old man. He is a shepherd. He is not a mighty military man. He's not nobility, and he's not royalty. He's just He looks like a sheep, probably smells like a sheep, and he's coming into Pharaoh. And have you ever noticed the pictures of Pharaoh who are all clean shaven and everything? You know why they were clean shaven? Because they were the original neat freaks, you know. They were the original germaphobes. And to have Moses come in, you know, where you could probably see some lice jumping off of you probably think about how Pharaoh's going to react to such a man, right? Okay. What would have happened if God didn't send Moses like he was, and even if Moses didn't look like that, even if Moses did clean himself up and look presentable to Pharaoh, which is, you know, probably the case anyway. I'm just bringing all that up to make a point. If God, instead of sending Moses, were to send an angel with a flaming sword, do you think Pharaoh would have had a different response? Very much so. But instead he sent Moses. Why did he send Moses? Because that was how God hardened Pharaoh's heart, right? You know, he started out with the plagues being small and grew them and grew them and grew them. You know, Pharaoh, very much at the very beginning, no, 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 no. And then, well, maybe, but with stipulations, the stipulations are rejected. No, no, no. Can't you see how God is using each and everything to harden Pharaoh's heart? But at the same time, it's always Pharaoh's response to say, no, I'm refusing the God of the Israelites. Okay? And so, you know, we go back to question number 4. If we have free will, why do Christians say that God is in control? Well, he is in control, right? And if we say, God, take control of this situation, sometimes maybe he will in terms of what we would see, what we would know, but sometimes maybe his plan and purpose is something entirely different whatsoever. And what's required of us is to just remember what Romans 8:28 says. What does Romans 8:28 say? Well, let's read it. All right. Romans 8. No, that's verse 1. That's verse 1. Verse 28 says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, those who have been called according to his purpose. And so in that kind of a situation, we need to remember, yes, God is in control. It doesn't mean that he controls everything. It doesn't mean that he controls somebody's actions, but it could mean that what he's going to do is he's going to work in spite of it to produce something that he wants done. And if we are called according to his purpose, that is, we're saved, and if we understand our place and role in what he's doing in our lives, then we can share in that glory later on. Okay? All right, does that answer the question?